Hello, friends. In a world that often feels restless and uncertain, we long for peace, for healing that reaches the soul. In this episode of Good News, we invite you into a sacred conversation about the quiet power of listening to our bodies, to one another, and to the rhythms of nature that reflect divine wisdom. Meet Trish Lott, a licensed acupuncturist whose journey speaks to the healing that comes when we attune ourselves to both spirit and creation. I'm Lynn Shematek with Deacons John Shematek and Lauren Welch.
Welcome, Trish Lott, to our podcast, Good News.
Trish, we're so happy to have you with us today. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Trish, you've had a fascinating life and career. You started, I think, as a health educator, and now you are a licensed acupuncturist, and you're also involved in international work with spreading the practice of acupuncture. Could just start wherever you'd like and tell us about you. We'd really like to get to know you.
Thank you for your interest. You're right. I did start decades ago as a health educator, mostly in reproductive health education. Shortly after college and a few years in Washington, D.C., I was in the Peace Corps in South America in Paraguay doing health education, which was really an amazing opportunity. I was living in a very rural farming community without electricity or running water, living really close to nature with an agrarian culture. I learned a lot, which informed my acupuncture practice.
So you were doing primarily health education in Paraguay as a Peace
Yeah,
Corps volunteer. And so I assume you're pretty fluent in Spanish, is that right?
Paraguay has two national languages. I arrived without either language skill, and then I went into my community after learning some Spanish and had to communicate with people who were more accustomed to using their indigenous language of Guarani. That was an interesting challenge. At one point, I said to them, Spanish is your second language, it's my second language. Can we meet there?
Oh, that's great.
And then, Trish, when you came back from Paraguay, you used that Spanish language skill.
I was living in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years and working in health education, reproductive health. And a big part of our population was El Salvadorian immigrants who were arriving in big numbers back in the 90s. That was really exciting. I improved my Spanish tremendously because that was the only language I was speaking and learning as a second language at that point.
And then, Trish, what drew you into the field of acupuncture?
It's a good question. I had been at a place in my life where I was considering grad school, but I was also considering going back to Paraguay and heading up the training for Peace Corps in Paraguay. And at the last minute, I declined the job and the invitation. And it left a huge void in my life. I had been preparing for this for a few months. And with good counsel from friends, feeling rather lost, they suggested I check out the graduate program in acupuncture that at the time was in Columbia, Maryland. I was living in a suburb of DC. Within 6 months of checking it out, I was enrolled in my master's degree program in September of 95. I had to clear away some other stuff to make room for this to land in my lap, so to speak. And I'm so glad it did. It's a beautiful path.
Yeah. What does it mean for you in terms of relating to your patients and the actual work that you're doing itself? Could you give us an idea about acupuncture and particularly the aspect of it that is meaningful to you? What is it that you notice in the course of that relationship with that patient?
Can I give a little bit of a background? Just
Please, absolutely.
I mentioned that having that experience in Paraguay and living so close to nature really informs my practice. This medicine's been around for thousands of years. It was developed in an agrarian culture where people were keen observers of nature, and they started to recognize the movement, balance, and rhythms of nature and how they also play out in our body. So they developed a system of medicine that is energy based, right? They recognize there's energetic flows and balances in nature, they're happening in our body. And that if the energy, also called chi, in our bodies is out of balance or deficient, our bodies cannot maintain health in the way that it was designed to do, or to heal from pernicious influences, which back then people living close to nature, mostly their illnesses were based on the elements outside, right? So this medicine developed over thousands of years and still proves itself to be effective, which says a lot. And so applying that sense of what nature is doing, the rhythm, the energy, we look at the body as a kingdom, and that our internal organs have a really specific role and place in the kingdom. It's most important that the heart, the sovereign of the kingdom, is balanced so that the rest of the kingdom will function as meant to be. I love to cook with fresh fruits and vegetables. I feel really connected and grounded in nature. And so what I do in the treatment room is help to remind patients about their connection to the natural cycles and how we can harness the energy of nature to help heal our bodies, bring balance, and have a holistic body, mind, spirit connection to the world around us, and especially connection to the people around us that's heart-centered.
How difficult was that to translate for your indigenous folk in Paraguay? And later on, I want to hear about your Guatemala experience. How does that translate culturally?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't have the understanding of Eastern philosophy before I went to Paraguay. The sequence of events was Paraguay, living close to the earth, coming back to the States, doing a combination of organic farming. I was also a farmer at that stage of life. And then heading to grad school to learn acupuncture. I had this really wonderful experience last summer. For the first time after 35 years, I did return to Paraguay, and I brought my needles with me. So it did come full circle eventually, in that I was able to treat some of my folks in Paraguay. I call them my family. And I hope to maybe return one day and teach them how to use acupuncture in their own clinic. The work I'm doing in Guatemala currently with Global Acupuncture Project, nonprofit organization, where we go in and we teach other healthcare providers. This group in Guatemala is a group of midwives and doulas. They come from far and wide of Guatemala City, and they're learning and taking this treatment protocols back to their community. When we're teaching, we're sticking to the basics of how to apply safe, accurate acupuncture in their clinical settings.
We have a practice in Towson, Maryland, in Baltimore County. Is that right?
Community Acupuncture of Towson. I opened it 15 years ago. It's a really beautiful business model, which allows me to treat a wide group of patients. This business model allows affordable, effective, and accessible acupuncture in the heart of Towson, because more people who have to pay for these services out of pocket can obtain the treatments they need to get well and stay well,
Uh,
priced affordably.
are there a fair number of your patients maybe Spanish speaking as well? There's a pretty big community there, I believe, of immigrants and refugees.
Unfortunately, I haven't tapped into that community very well with
Okay.
my practice. I have in the past had some Spanish speaking patients, but the community has not found its way to my door yet, which is ironic. My husband's Peruvian.
Lauren, I'm going to bounce it to you because I just am monopolizing this whole conversation.
John, I think you've asked really great questions. Trish, can you talk some more about community acupuncture and how it is different from a normal individual acupuncturist?
Sure. Yeah, when I went through acupuncture school, 95 to 98, I was taught to treat patients one-on-one in a small room, like a massage room with a kind of massage bed, people lying out. It also gave me access to points on the back of the body, and sometimes having people get undressed, so we had access to other points in other areas. I fell in love with the community acupuncture model. Like I said, it's been over 15 years, so probably 16 years ago. I read an article about it. I looked up where the closest one was to me here in Towson. It was in Frederick, Maryland. There was only two in the state at the time. I looked at the schedule and my watch and I said, I could get out there, get a treatment, and get back to meet the kids off the school bus. So I did that. I got out of the chair at the end of my acupuncture treatment and I said, this is what I'm going to do. So I embrace this business model first and foremost because it's giving access to more people. I have a big 800 square foot room. I have a dozen Lazy Boy style recliner chairs. I took a lot of extra credit classes to learn how to primarily treat using points on the lower limbs so people don't have to undress in our setting. They're just rolling up their pant leg, pushing up their sleeves, their head and face and ears are accessible. So I can treat people up to 6 patients in an hour that way. They get their needles and their treatment, and then they sit and they rest while I'm moving on to the next person. So it's individualized treatment. I do a private intake in the beginning, get clear about what the treatment plan will be and how I'm going to approach helping this particular patient in front of me. But then everything else is done in the community setting with dimly lit, soft music playing, people whispering. Often I feel and my patients feel that there is some kind of collective energy that happens when people are healing together. And it's a beautiful thing. John, in your work with people, you know that you have to tune your nervous system and your senses to pick up more than what people are saying or what with your eyes, right? I've been doing this work for a long time and cultivating a sense of groundedness, being heart-centered, and keeping my mind clear so that my senses can take in what's in front of me and quickly make a decision about what will serve this person best at this time and what I'm capable of giving. My son sometimes refers to what I do as not Chinese medicine, but Chinese magic. And I feel like it's really about having an attuned nervous system. And that's also what I want to help my patients to refine their attunement. So we can pick up a lot of information if we're open to our senses and use the proper filters, the heart and the mind.
That makes me think that very likely there are all sorts of ways to listen. It goes beyond the ears, as we're very interested in listening, and that's certainly one. If we could flip back to Guatemala, I have a special interest there. The first time I went decades ago on a medical missionary trip was to Guatemala. We really weren't in Guatemala City at all. We went to various small villages in the outskirts. Our patients were all indigenous Mayan people. I had listened to some Berlitz tapes for a few weeks before going, so you can imagine what my Spanish was like. It's non existent. I'm just wondering when you're going, your model there is you're having the midwives, and they are the big providers of medical care in a lot of countries like Guatemala, come in to learn that some of the technical aspects of acupuncture. They come into Guatemala City and then go out to their communities. Do you have any gauge on what sort of impact they're having in their communities? Is something changing as a result of that?
I love that you pointed out that midwives are usually primary care providers in a lot of villages, right? We're not even focused currently in teaching them about obstetrics and gynecology. We're really focused on the chicken soup kind of issues that anybody from their community may come into their clinical setting. Mostly it is women, but they have been sending messages. We're in a chat sending pictures, images, and questions, looking for guidance around certain patients. So we are getting feedback from them. As far as statistically speaking and numbers wise, I have no sense of that, but they are enthusiastic, serving their communities. And the lovely thing is I went for the first time in September, met the same group of students in January, going back in July again with the same. So each time we layer in new information and hone their skills with them, but we're also offering support in between these trainings. Some pretty amazing results people are having and reporting back to us, and it's really quite lovely.
You're building some very profound relationships that are
Yes.
extending between you and the midwives and all the women primarily that they take care of. There's a whole network of healing that's going on there, it sounds. And so, Trish, you've had a very interesting journey. It's an exciting, worthwhile journey that you've been on. Along the way, have there been any particular obstacles or bumps in the road that have been especially informative in informing your mission and your life, what you really are meant to do?
I've definitely had some bumps in the road and obstacles. Mostly it was not having a clear vision about what my role was, how to bring my skills and talents into the world. And I'm still questioning that. Is there more that I'm supposed to be doing? I'm not even sure. That place between thinking I was going back to Paraguay to head up training for Peace Corps and then landing in grad school a few months later, I felt totally lost in that in between place. It was a leap of faith that I took to decline the job and then jump into grad school. I happened to meet my husband at acupuncture school, and we have two amazing sons. Sometimes I think that we're guided in ways that we don't even pick up with our senses. We are just, or I have been pulled along on my path from things that I guess I call it spirit. I guess I call it the goddess's hand in my life.
No, I think that's exactly what I was wondering about. And it sounds like to me that you listen with your heart and you're open with your heart. And we often talk about in our particular faith circle that what you are meant to do or called to do is at the intersection of where your heart's deepest joy is and where the world's greatest needs are. And to find that, you're doing exactly what you're doing, which is listening with your whole self is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's nice to talk with like spirited people.
Okay. Lauren, guess what? Lauren always gets the last question. Not the last word, but the last question.
Trish, what bit of wisdom, what bit of advice would you like to leave our listeners and people who are watching?
Thank you. I want people to remember that they are part of the natural world around us. There's this concept in Chinese philosophy or Chinese medicine that the father sky or sun and the mother earth created the 10,000 beings, all the living things on the planet, and that we are all connected to that. If we start to get more attuned to the natural world around us, we can harness that for living a more balanced and healthy life. Oftentimes I'll say to a patient, go spend some time outside, especially right now. Listen to the birds. Get the sun on your face and in your eyes. Smell the smells that are around you, because that helps to attune our nervous system to manage what is a somewhat chaotic world these days.
Oh, that's great advice. So, Trish, we both want to thank you very much for your time and for being with us today and sharing your story with our viewers and listeners. I just can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
And I want to thank all who are watching and listening for the gift of your time with us today. Until next time, peace and blessings.
This episode of Good News has been brought to you by Listening for Clues. For more podcasts, check out our YouTube channel or our website listeningforclues.com.